here.
Well, we have some very severe conditions along the Gulf Coast. We've got Hurricane Earl in the Gulf approaching the Florida Panhandle. We have tornado warnings over parts of Florida running out ahead of the storm, and also some hurricane-force winds have been detected on the shoreline around Panama City. Let's take a look at the latest coordinates that we have right now on this. It's located or centered 29.2 north, 87.4 west. South-southwest of Destin. This was at 4 Central Time by 100 miles. Winds of 100 miles an hour in a small area to the east and northeast of the center. Moving northeast to 10 miles an hour, and the pressure 986 millibars, which is as low as we've seen it. So a very strong storm out there over the Gulf of Mexico. Now it's technically a Category 2 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. That would start at 96 miles an hour, capable of moderate damage if some of those 100-mile-an-hour winds do hit the shoreline and some of the waves and high water that's associated with a Category 2 hurricane come on shore, so capable of moderate damage in localities. Pascagoula, Mississippi to Suwannee River, Florida, that's where the hurricane warnings are displayed, and watches to the west still in there, but bound to be lowered as our storm continues to move to the north and east. Now, we also have tropical storm warnings from the Suwannee River to Anclote Keys in Florida, and this is the tough side of the storm that has more severe weather right now, and tropical storm warnings off to the west. Still in effect, but bound to be lowered again as our storm moves to the east. Storm surge could get up to 8 to 12 feet locally from around Panama City and Destin all the way to Cedar Key, including Appalachia Bay and Apalachicola. That is serious, folks. 8 to 12 feet could be very damaging flooding, especially where you don't have much dune protection. And also, we now have a coastal flood warning from Tarpon Springs to Englewood, Florida, just about down to the Tampa Bay area, for flooding along the coastline as our winds come in off the Gulf of Mexico. Not to forget that we have a tornado watch in Florida that's associated with Hurricane Earl. Hurricane Earl now hitting the Florida coastline in Panama City and also in Gulf Shores. We have Bill Keneally and Jim Cantore. Bill has been getting hammered with high winds and heavy rain. Bill?
Mike, you have hit the nail on the head. Believe me, we're getting hammered. We're in the right front quadrant of Hurricane Earl. This is what happens in the right front quadrant. Phenomenal wind, probably on the order of 75 to 80 miles per hour. My Gore-Tex outfit getting put to the test. The big concern, though, will be the water. What is going on behind me? This is probably the highest wind we have seen, on the order of 80 to 90 miles per hour. It is pulling water literally out of the pool back towards the Gulf. We have a due east wind right here. The seas are literally chaos. They're crashing, probably 10, 11-foot seas, and once again, the water's just spraying every which way. The tide is now rushing in. I see a broken up board out there. Some of the lifeguard equipment has just broken up behind me, and this is coming in, crashing into a seawall. And cameraman Randy, hang on there, bud. We continue to see the tide coming in likewise. The tide, unfortunately, is still about 4 or 5 hours out from being in high tide. This is a situation everybody's got to hunker down, ride it out. We'll be heading indoors shortly, I promise you. Let's see what's happening now on the other end of the beach, taken out of Gulf Shores, Alabama. Here's Jim Cantore. Jim?
Well, Bill, this feels like a vacation in Hawaii compared to what you're going through. I mean, unbelievable, folks. That's what it's like being in the eastern side of a hurricane. That's why we always mention that. I, on the other hand, I'm on the northwest quadrant, which is pretty much never developed with this particular hurricane, and amazingly enough in a Cat 2 that it did not develop. But here you go. This is the big story tonight. It's the surf, huge surf. 10 to 15-foot breakers out here. These are worse than what they had in Danny. So just absolutely huge waves, and there is no dune activity here at all. So everything is coming right up onto the beaches and right up very, very close to the buildings here. So thank goodness we don't have to add 8 to 10 feet of surge on top of this. Back to you, Mike.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jim, for that report. It looks pretty impressive out there, but not as bad, apparently, as Panama City. John Hope, it's looking pretty rough, and I guess they're just getting into that central area of the storm at Panama City, just north of the center.
Right, we're very anxious to see how that wind shifts around there. It looks as if the center is going to come very close to Panama City, and it looks as if it should do it in the next several hours, too. It's too far away from there even right now.
Looks pretty serious out there. Bill was having a hard time standing. Luckily, he was sideways into the wind.
He's estimated some very high winds there, 80 or 90 miles an hour. We haven't had any actual winds reported that high on shore yet.
Maybe a funneling effect around the side of the hotel where he's in.
Yeah, I think that probably enhances it a bit.
Right. Well, we've got an impressive presentation, let's say, on the satellite picture, but let's try and find the center.
It's a little hard. This is an infrared picture. We can see it better on the visible, but right down in there, I believe, is very close to where the center is. And the movement is just about due northeast now.
As we zoom in, maybe we can see a little bit better. Bill Keneally right around this area, and there's certainly some intense rain squalls and wind squalls moving toward him right now.
Yes, the next several hours he's going to get the brunt of this, and after that, once it gets on past, then it should be letting up there.
Jim, on the other hand, is here, and they're getting a bit of an offshore flow and a lot less action there. Again, Jim Cantori, some light rain in the area, but Bill is getting into the heart of the storm action right now.
And again, the center down here where we can't quite detect it on the radar, but you can see some of these showers, just very, very heavy showers coming up toward Panama City along with strong winds.
So what do we think about the movement and the projected intensity as it goes along?
Well, we think the movement is going to continue toward the northeast. I don't think there's a whole lot of doubt about that anymore. That ought to be moving toward the northeast. And I see no change in that either. It's been a pretty steady movement toward the northeast. I think that will continue.
Okay, so folks along that Gulf Coast, east of Panama City especially, or from Destin and Panama City eastward to Appalachia Bay, may very well get hurricane conditions.
That's going to be the highest winds and the highest storm surge as well.
Highest water. Okay, John Hope, thank you very much. We'll keep you posted more on our hurricane as it's making impact on the coastline. Should make landfall overnight tonight. You'll want to stay tuned to the Weather Channel for that. And when you're on the internet surfing the web, our website is www.weather.com for the latest on position reports and also on other storms that are out there, and we'll cover those in the Tropical Update. Now back to the studio. Here's Bob Stokes.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Severe weather threatening the greater Philadelphia area, especially in the western part of the metro Philadelphia area and southern Los Angeles County. Tornado warning still in effect. But first, we'll start off with the east. Let's take a look at our map, and we have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for the eastern part of Philadelphia, and contained in that watch is a tornado warning for Chester County in the eastern part of Philadelphia. Watch out in Westchester, just to the west of Philadelphia. Tornado warning in effect. We'll show you a radar in a moment. And here's our tornado watch in effect because of Hurricane Earl for central and northern and northwestern Florida. Let's take a look at the northeastern map. We've got a frontal boundary in place, warm, juicy air coming up ahead of it, and there's our strong thunderstorms. Let's focus in right now, and you can see these are dangerous thunderstorm cells moving toward the east-southeast, and the towns of Westchester remain in the path of this storm as it moves toward the east-southeast. Tornado warning in effect for Chester County in the eastern part of Philadelphia, or the eastern part of Pennsylvania, and driving westward out of Philadelphia, threatening the southern Baja and northwestern Mexico with mudslides, and also very heavy rain and thunderstorms across southern California right now.
As bad as it is right here, believe me, it's pretty bad with wind and rain. The big concern is going to be the surge if this hurricane does come in off to the west of us. But again, the wind is phenomenal, probably gusting 80 miles per hour right now. The wind is coming in from the east, is cutting through the building here. What it's doing behind me is pretty amazing too. It is pulling water literally out of the pool. So far, the other amazing thing I might add, we still have power, by the way. I don't think we're long for the world in that department though. Farther out over the water, I don't know if we can see a whole lot now. Randy's gonna pan, the visibility is greatly cut, but the seas are just chaotic, Mike. We're looking at breakers of 10 to 12 feet. The wind is just knocking them down. The spray is howling in the air. It's just a wild time. This is the right front quadrant of Hurricane Earl. This is the area we definitely want to avoid, and I promise we're heading inside after the shot. Now, let's see what's happening over on the other side, over in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And for that, let's go to Jim Cantor.
Hurricane Earl is making landfall on the Florida Panhandle here tonight. Meanwhile, tornadic thunderstorms through the Philadelphia area, tornadoes in Florida, and a tornado warning in California. So lots of action here across the country and out over the water. Welcome to this special edition of Weather Center. I'm Dave Schwartz. First to the hurricane, at least the one closest to the United States. This is what it looks like on radar. This Tampa right in the center. And you can see the swirl out here. That's near the center of circulation of Hurricane Earl as it makes its trip northeast onto the Florida Panhandle right now. And of course, we've got live coverage here at the Weather Channel. Those of us here in the studio that can let you know what to expect, and two of our reporters who are out in the field, Bill Keneally and Jim Cantori. Let's go to Jim Cantori first. Jim, you're in Gulf Shores, Alabama, west of where this hurricane's going to make landfall. What does it look like there tonight?
Well, Dave, this is one of the positive aspects of being on the west side of a storm, especially a weaker one where it never really got established on the west side. Just a beautiful sunset tonight. You know, that's what's nice. You know you're going to go through some rough times early on with the landfalling hurricane, but after that, or if you're on the western side of it, definitely some big improvements. We've got blue sky and just a beautiful night. But huge surf. Check out this surf tonight. Absolutely huge. There's easily 10 to 12 foot seas. We just had high tide about an hour ago, and that has since pulled on out a little bit, and the breakers aren't as bad. Actually, we even got a rainbow there, Blair. You probably can see that just off to the left of where you are right now. Got a beautiful rainbow tonight. So again, Dave, a lot of positive aspects here on the west side, and these folks in Gulf Shores, Alabama, not having another blow from a hurricane like they did with Danny back in July of '97. So good news on this side. But over to the east, ladies and gentlemen, there's a whole different story. That's where they're getting hammered in the Florida Panhandle. So take it easy and just wait this one out tonight if you're still there and you still got cable. Right now, let's go to Bill Keneally and find out just how bad it is in Panama City.
Cue me.
All right.
Go. All right, guys, we're thankfully a little more protected now. We're on the second floor balcony. The sea spray is still kicking in here. There's still a lot of rain falling, I might add, as well. Randy's going to pan out here and take a look at the high tide starting to roll in. The tide is going to be high about 10 o'clock tonight, and depending on the track of Hurricane Earl, will determine if we do see a storm surge here. It would be nice if the hurricane would stay to our south. That would tend to hold the east and northeast wind in here and tend to pull the water along the beach rather than up onto the beach. So that's going to be one concern. The other, obviously, the wind. Behind me you can see our wind still blowing rather hard from the east, probably on the order of 50 and 60 miles per hour. But as far as a real problem, we'll be dealing with the surge at worst. Very heavy rain likewise. There's going to be a fair amount of flooding inland. And people, please, in the Panama City beach area, just hunker down and wait this one out. Now let's turn back to Dave, I guess, in the Atlanta studio.
That's right. Thanks, Bill. Boy, what a contrast between the weather you're experiencing and what Bill's got just a couple of hours drive off to the west. Well, I turn now to our hurricane expert tonight, Dr. Steve Lyons. This is the third hurricane of the Atlantic hurricane season. It's really getting active, and this one's coming on shore right now.
You're right, and right just about at the peak of hurricane season, just about the time we normally expect it.
Let's have a look at it from the satellite perspective, then we'll get in close with the radar. Steve, what do you see?
Well, the circulation center is roughly in here, heading to the northeast at about 10 miles per hour, and that track is pretty much beeline right now. I don't see it changing in the next 6 to 12 hours. Keep in mind that most of the action here is on the east side, over and east side of the system. So it's basically half a hurricane here. The other half on this side, as you saw from Jim, is very, very calm.
Now, we can get in close to where the action is right now here. This is the Doppler radar on the Florida Panhandle.
Yeah, you can see here the circulation center's back out in here, moving toward the northeast. Some of these very squally shower areas are bringing down fast winds from aloft down to the surface. So whenever you have this very strong shower area, those are where you're going to have the strongest winds at the ground.
In addition to the rain, of course, storm surge will be a problem later on tonight, further east.
Yeah, storm surge, of course, you can see 8 to 12 feet. It's going to be a little bit smaller over in this area and larger here, but the wave action will be bigger here and smaller here. So the overall effect is going to be on the order of 8 to 10 feet.
So the worst is yet to come out here. Also have a tornado watch in effect for Florida.
That's rather typical of landfalling tropical systems, and right at landfall with those bands we're seeing now, we could definitely see some severe weather tornadoes.
Hurricane Earl packing 100-mile-per-hour winds moving northeast toward the Florida coast. And there is a tornado warning in effect for southern Volusia and northern Brevard counties. Dr. Steve Lyons, thank you so much for your expert work here with us, and we'll see you later on tonight as this hurricane gets closer. And thank you for tuning into the Weather Channel for a look at this rough weather. And of course, anytime you need information, check us out online at our website, weather.com. As I said, there's severe weather in the northeast and, strangely enough, in the LA basin. For more on that, here's Terry Smith.
All right, thanks, Dave. We do have a line of strong to severe thunderstorms that are moving through the northeast this evening. High winds and small hail are all part of the mix. Let's go ahead and show you, not the hurricane, though we'll obviously show you a little bit more about that in a moment. Let's show you where we might see the rough weather this evening. Now, Dave's already mentioned the severe thunderstorms down across Florida, the possibility of that in Georgia, but in the northeast and in the southwest this evening, we are currently seeing severe thunderstorms. And it's possible later on tonight in parts of the Midwest we could see some rough weather. Let's take you first on into the northeast, where we've been watching a line of fairly intense thunderstorms working their way southeastward across southern sections of New York State, into Connecticut, through parts of New Jersey, and then down into eastern sections of Pennsylvania. And we've had a couple of warnings out. One warning for Middlesex County here, just south of Newark. That'll be expiring soon as that thunderstorm continues to move off toward the east-southeast and should be out over the open water. But with any of these thunderstorms in this particular line, we've had reports of some very gusty winds and some small hail, and you can be prepared for some brief periods of heavy rain. Looks like the rain should be over with, though, by tomorrow evening in New York City. Now, as we expand out a little bit further, you can see some of the rains pushing on into western sections of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and then again just to around the Philadelphia area. And these should be pushing off to sea later on tonight and shouldn't be too much of a problem. The thunderstorms we're seeing here are in advance of this cold front that's working its way through the northeast. The thunderstorms that we're seeing in the southwest, on the other hand, are, well, a result of some moisture that's been moving in from the south and some upper level winds out of the north that are helping to generate some very intense thunderstorms here in Ventura County, just north of Los Angeles. These are moving southwest. They're weakening, but in the meantime, they're going to be producing some very heavy rain, so localized flooding certainly is a possibility. Along with gusty winds, we've had reports of 58-mile-an-hour winds around Ventura County earlier, and some small hail as well. So it's going to be a while before things begin to quiet down a little bit there. And as you can see here in the southwest, we also have some thunderstorms as well, and those are moving off toward the north and east. So it's going to be a little bit stormy around Flagstaff and also around the Grand Canyon area. All right, well, let's look at the big picture. Of course, most folks, you're drawing your eyes to the south, where it looks like Earl will be moving onshore near Florida sometime later tonight, early tomorrow morning as a hurricane, and will continue to move northward. ISIS here in the Gulf of California also moving northward and spewing moisture on into the southwest. So those will be the big areas of concentrated rain. Cold front moving through the northeast, some showers with that perhaps. And then into the Midwest, it looks like around Des Moines and Rockford, Illinois, we could be dealing with some wet weather. Now, north of the front, cool temperatures. South of the front, still kind of warm and muggy, particularly from the mid-Atlantic through the southwest. Now, as we take you around the country tomorrow morning, it looks like maybe some showers just south of Boston, around Cape Cod and Norfolk area, but the rest of the Northeast looking very nice, dry, mild temperatures to start the day in the 60s and 70s. 60s and 70s as you head toward Texas, and Bonnie making landfall is going to create a messy morning anywhere from Tampa up toward Albany, maybe some rain south of Atlanta, but Atlanta, you should be dry. Upper Midwest, generally dry, except for maybe some isolated showers here in the Minnesota and Iowa area, but a pleasant morning, certainly drier. And then some isolated showers and perhaps thunderstorms in the morning in the southwest. No big deal tomorrow, but beginning more active in the afternoon as ISIS continues to crawl northward. The other thing we'll be watching is this low spreading on into Chicago with some rain. And then, of course, down to the south, the weakening hurricane becoming Tropical Storm Earl. That's where we'll see the heavy rains, perhaps anywhere, again, from 5 to 10 inches of rainfall possible there. We'll keep our eyes on that and keep you posted of any flooding concerns. As a result, temperatures are going to be quite cool in the east, but for you folks in the central sections of the country, particularly Texas, the heat is back. Well, just a reminder that telecommunications for the Weather Channel's live reports are provided in part by Bell South. Stay tuned with us. We are going to have continuous updates on Hurricane Earl, but first, the latest travel conditions nationwide. Just ahead on TravelWise after your forecast.
Oh no! Foot pain got you down again?
It might bring some rain around Des Moines and toward Chicago perhaps later in the afternoon. And then in the southwest, we're also keeping an eye on what is Hurricane ISIS working its way up the Gulf of California. We're already seeing some rains in advance of it, well in advance of it, in Arizona and Southern California, including around Los Angeles. And that'll be the case again on Thursday. So San Diego, LA, you may be looking at some wet weather. Looks like it'll gradually be tapering off some wet Friday, but still with us Friday on into Saturday. Here's Earl. Again, the heavier rains working their way northward, so Raleigh and Norfolk expect some scattered showers during the day Friday. Now, it looks like a fairly nice beach weekend Friday going on into Saturday across much of the Gulf Coast, But for those Saturday night football games, the high school football games, or even the college football games, not the best football weather, I'd say, playing in the rain here. And the showers increasing in the southwest because, again, of what is left of ISIS.
It's time for Storm Watch at the Weather Channel, and we'll take a look at the active stormy weather around the country. It's being sponsored by Home Depot. A couple of brand new tornado warnings for extreme eastern Franklin County, also Aquila County in Florida, and southeastern Alachua County as well. Pretty stormy night. We'll begin our look with some other action in Florida, including where we're dealing with tropical troubles. And it's in the form of Hurricane Earl. We'll begin now with Storm Watch and the tropical update. Here's Hurricane Earl. And you can see its current position there. It's located just now some 70 miles to the southwest of Destin, Florida. Winds are around 100 miles per hour as far as being sustained in that range. Also moving northeast around 29.15 inches of mercury. That's its current pressure as well. Here's where it was classified. This system we talked about like way back in the weekend, saying if it popped up, it would pop up and intensify rapidly. That it did. And it's definitely moving in toward, or hanging out still in the Gulf of Florida. Now we're going to look as far as when landfall becomes, if it becomes evident, or if this thing continues to drift somewhat to the east. We'll continue to look at all the possibilities coming up in a few moments with the Weather Center. The bottom line is, though, especially on the eastern side of this, the winds are incredible. This is not a time to be sightseeing into portions of the panhandle of Florida. Anywhere you're here, if you're in an area you see shaded in that red right there, indicates areas where we have hurricane warnings in effect. Some hurricane watches remain in effect in parts of Louisiana, but this area right here appears to be the spot where things are most risky. Again, as the hurricane remains here, if it continues to move in, maybe somewhere in the vicinity of the Panama City region, that's where we could expect some of the greatest problems. Again, it has been having somewhat of an easterly drift, but again, problems here are really rough tonight. Incredible wind, incredible rain. And we'll have Bill Keneally live from there in a few moments, and you'll see exactly what I mean about the problems in this area. Very hard hit Very risky. You need to stay tuned to the Weather Channel anywhere in this region because we could be seeing an interaction in landfall somewhere in this vicinity into portions of Florida. Any place in the warnings, even if you don't see the actual center move in, that's not as important as you may think. I mean, yes, it could mean some incredible winds in this area, but anywhere you see, even if you're maybe say over in this section of Florida, as this thing moves along, bear in mind there's a lot of circulation here. There's a lot of moisture here, a lot of wind and a lot of rain to fall. Anywhere in the warned area, be advised, you could definitely encounter hurricane conditions in the periphery here, even many miles out, especially to the east with incredible winds. So we'll keep you on top of that here at the Weather Channel. As far as tropical storm advisories go, there's where you see a number of those in effect still because the winds, although obviously Earl a hurricane, you may still encounter tropical storm winds and tropical storm conditions this far off to the west. And the primary threat right now in the Florida Panhandle from its present position. Something else is a threat for Florida, and not at all uncommon when you start to see a hurricane move in and interact with land. When the interaction begins, we often see tornadoes. That's again why we had to mention a few of those a moment ago, where we have tornado warnings in effect into Florida. Be very careful here. We're talking about the risk of this continuing for quite a while because the system is in no hurry to move across. There you can see already a lot of the moisture in this region. You can hardly see the towns here, Tallahassee and even Panama City back to Pensacola. You can obviously see a big batch of circulation here. We'll talk more again about the position because as it moves in, it's going to be pretty important to see how much rain is going to fall through here between now and noon, maybe in the 5 to 10 inch range. We'll discuss this coming up a little bit further. Elsewhere with Storm Watch, we'll talk about more of the problems into the northeast, including extreme eastern Gloucester County into Jersey, where we have a tornado warning in effect. You want to seek shelter. This is a real rough situation in the parts of Jersey. Also, even toward Hartford, we've got wet weather. Even some more storms could move toward Boston before the end of the evening is over, and even out around Providence. Around the city, we're wet and could stay that way as well. Something getting away from us here is 375 miles to the southwest of Sable Island. That is moving on, moving to the northeast around 30. Really expected to continue to accelerate. Winds down to 80 miles per hour. As this thing moves on, it can continue to fall apart in much, much cooler water. Watching a batch of convection here, nothing really expected as far as organization imminent in this area. Also watching additional waves for anything, but nothing being seen presently. So another wave about to make an exit there from the coast around the Cape Verde. That's our talk of the Atlantic, and there's a lot of that. Again, we'll talk more of this coming up in Weather Center at the top of the hour. Here's Hurricane Isis. Winds sustained around 75 miles per hour. Could be very problematic in this region. That's why we have a number of tropical storm advisories. Looks like it may eventually make more of a north-northwesterly turn. That's one possible scenario, not expected to change dramatically in strength. But we could deal with more problems here. Again, we'll discuss this and continue to monitor this very dangerous hurricane. Already a lot of moisture slung into southern Cal, so I've had the stormy problems tonight around Los Angeles. Lots of storms, and of course, Hurricane Earl, the big story. We'll discuss this in great detail in Weather Center next.
I'm meteorologist Bill Keneally. We continue to get blasted by the effects of Hurricane Earl. We'll have a full report on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by the Home Depot.
As a customer, you're so important to us that you should have the best price all the time rather than just sometimes when other stores think it's convenient for you.
Home Depot doesn't have sales because we have an everyday low price.
The competitors have to have